Hello everyone, welcome to MMA Wired. Dana White is one of the most successful promoters of all time. He's helped build MMA into what it is today, and has made some incredible fights over the years. However, there are a few super fights that he passed up on, which could have been even bigger than some of the matches we've seen. Here are 5 super fights that Dana White should have made, but didn't. Don't miss out on our next update. Subscribe and get your hands on the latest stories before the rest. So here's the deal with super fights. It is seeing the best in the world take on other legends. MMA fans often state that the best thing about MMA is that the best fight the best. Dana White also thinks the same. Dana White said during a recent fan Q&A hosted by Laura Senko,
"Well, if you think about it, I've made every fight that was ever possible to make in MMA, including Mayweather and McGregor. So
Yeah.
the only fight that I ever failed to make was Fedor versus Brock. Every other fight that we ever thought about or the fans wanted to see or whatever it was, I've made."
but that is not always true. Ever since Dana White took over the UFC, we have had incredible fights, and the sport has grown massively. There have been times when we, the fans, clamored for a matchup only to see it never materialize. So Dana White isn't always right about that. Let's now talk about 5 UFC super fights that should have happened, but never did. First up, there is Fedor Emelianenko versus Brock Lesnar. This is the first fight that Dana White admits should have happened. Fans started demanding this fight back in 2009. So, Fedor Emelianenko had not lost a bout in 9 years, and he had a 27-0 record. So he was considered one of the greatest fighters in the heavyweight category. On the other side, there was Brock Lesnar, WWE legend and fan favorite. He had a strong fan following in UFC and WWE. He won the UFC Heavyweight Championship in a dominating victory over Randy Couture. In 2010, he went on to become the undisputed UFC Heavyweight Champion after unifying the Heavyweight Championships. So Dana White met with Fedor Emelianenko in order to bring him over to the UFC so that this matchup could happen. Even the venue was set. The fight was supposed to happen at the AT&T Stadium in Texas. But Dana White and Fedor never reached an agreement, and Fedor didn't join UFC. Fedor instead signed with Strikeforce, where he went 1-3. The second fight we'll talk about is Georges St. Pierre versus Anderson Silva. So Dana White said in 2012, if Georges St. Pierre against Anderson Silva were to happen, that's the fight you could do at Cowboy Stadium. We've been talking to Cowboy Stadium officials for a while. People were excited to have this fight happen, and the fighters were ready. The only issue was size. So Anderson Silva was 185 pounds and was massive compared to Georges St. Pierre. And this size difference made Dana White a bit apprehensive about the fight. So this fight did not happen. Now let's talk about the third fight on the list, and that is Ronda Rousey versus Cris Cyborg. Fans were calling this fight the unstoppable force versus the immovable object. Ronda Rousey was killing it in the bantamweight category, and she was known for her armbar move. She even defended her title on 6 consecutive occasions. Similarly, Cris Cyborg also had an incredible reputation at Invicta FC. She was dubbed the hardest-hitting woman in MMA. The problem with this fight was that Ronda Rousey wanted Cris Cyborg to come down to 135 pounds, and Ronda Rousey didn't want to bulk up to 140 pounds. Also, by the time UFC got around to signing Cris Cyborg, Ronda Rousey was past her prime. The fourth fight on our list also stars Ronda Rousey, and this time it's Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano. So Gina Carano is probably the first female MMA superstar. Ronda Rousey versus Gina Carano during their primes would have been a great fight to watch. Unfortunately, Gina Carano ended her career after a 2009 loss to Cris Cyborg. Then she went to Hollywood and became an actor. Gina Carano revealed in 2019 that she was offered $1 million to fight Ronda Rousey, but by then she had become a full-time actor and had movie commitments. Gina Carano stated,
The next day, Dana was out there talking about me and saying, talking about my name and telling the people that he was going to sign me. And I don't even have a team yet. And I was like, that's not what we discussed. You're supposed to give me at least 6 months to kind of like find a team.
Lastly, we will look at John Jones versus Francis Ngannou. So John Jones is still waiting to make his return to the octagon as a heavyweight, and there is no bigger fight he could come back to than facing champion Francis Ngannou. This should be a no-brainer, and we should have gotten this fight sometime in 2021 after Ngannou knocked out Stipe Miocic for the title. The problem? Jones wanted more money, as did Ngannou, and since White isn't inclined to give them increases, we don't get a super fight fans have clamored for, and one that would generate huge revenue for the UFC. And that's a wrap. Let us know your thoughts in the comments.